Okay, this is our audience.
My name is Amber, and today I'm going to be telling you about vaccinations. Some of us here probably plan to have children one day, and we all know how messy children are and how easy it is for them to get sick. And an easy way to keep them from getting sick is to get them vaccinated. It's important for all children to get vaccinated to keep them and everyone else around them healthy. I've noticed that there is an increase of people claiming that giving vaccinations to children causes them more problems than they fix, and this isn't true. I've done a lot of research to show you that this isn't true, and I'm going to tell you about the history of vaccines, the myths behind them, and the effects of not vaccinating children. As we all know, vaccines are used to prevent diseases. The way they work is you take a little bit of a specific disease and introduce it into someone's immune system. Then your body can fight off this little bit of disease and build up an immunity to it, build up a resistance to it, and be able to fight off any larger doses that are introduced into the body. The ancient Greeks were the first to notice this, that when people who had smallpox did not get smallpox again after they were healthy. And it wasn't until about 900 AD that this knowledge was put to use. At this time, Chinese people had discovered the first vaccination method. At this time, smallpox was spreading everywhere. Paul Offit writes in his book, Deadly Choices, smallpox killed more than the Black Death and all the wars of the 20th century combined. About 500 million people died from the disease. The goal of this vaccine was to expose healthy people to infected tissue so they could build up an immunity to the disease. Doctors would usually take a scraping from an infected scab, grind it to dust, and blow it up a person's nose. This process, which at the time was called variolation, eventually spread throughout Europe, where smallpox was killing 1/5 of the population. While this method did occasionally cause illness and even death, it lowered the smallpox rate substantially. In 1796, Edward Jenner, who, according to FamousScientist.org, overheard a girl say that she could not get the dreaded smallpox disease because she already had another similar disease known as cowpox. Therefore, she had built up an immunity to it and wasn't able to get it. Edward Jenner then created the modern vaccination as we know it today, and was able to prove to the scientific and medical world that it worked. Eventually, he was able to start the Royal Jenner Institute, and the smallpox vaccination spread throughout Europe, and then eventually to the U.S. People then went on to find vaccinations for other diseases, like rabies, which was discovered by Louis Pasteur in the 1800s. By the end of the 1920s, vaccines for diphtheria, tetanus, whooping cough, and tuberculosis were all available. These preventatives spread across the world, and vaccination programs dramatically reduced the number of deaths each year. Thanks to all these methods, smallpox was officially declared completely eradicated in 1980, which was one of the largest accomplishments in the medical world. Even in the 21st century, we are making developments in vaccinations. In 2013, a vaccination was introduced for the rotavirus and shingles, and the flu is now given as a nasal spray instead of an injection. Even with all the accomplishments made by vaccines, there is still resistance to it. The modern anti-vaccine movement started with a man named Andrew Wakefield. Wakefield conducted a study in the 1990s on 12 children that supposedly proved a link between the MMR vaccine and autism. Even though there was no clear link between the two, Wakefield published his study and declared that people stop using this vaccine. The public took this information very seriously, and many people refused to vaccinate their children. Since then, Wakefield's study has been revoked and proved false. By 2009, the UK's Sunday Times revealed that Wakefield had manipulated most of his data. It was revealed that Wakefield took blood samples from children at his son's birthday party and performed other questionable acts. In 2010, Lancet, the medical journal that published the study, revoked it, discounting it as false. The Wakefield study is one of less than 15 studies that the Lancet has retracted in its 186-year history. Wakefield's medical license was also revoked in 2010. After this incident, many rumors spread about vaccines. People started to believe that children would be healthier if they were not vaccinated. The most widely used excuse is that vaccinations cause children to get autism. The truth is no one really knows how children get autism, but it definitely isn't from vaccinations. The reason people think this is the symptoms of autism usually start to about 12 to 18 months of age, which is about the time that the MMR vaccine is given. And as stated by an article on immunizeforgood.com, some parents might attribute a connection between vaccines and their child's autism diagnosis because of the timing when children begin exhibiting symptoms of autism. So, being that these happen so close together, people attribute getting vaccinations to autism. Another popular claim is that doctors are just selling you vaccines to make money, which again isn't true. Research done by Judith Glasner proves that in general, doctors spend more money giving out vaccines than they are reimbursed for it. The research calculated the price of a vaccine and many other factors, including staff pay time and disposal. Then they worked with multiple doctors' offices to discuss reimbursements that they received for the vaccines, and concluded that for the majority of the time, they lose money when they give vaccines. And let's face it, if doctors were doing this to make money, they would still be selling cure-alls. A lot of people believe that their kids are a lot healthier because they didn't get vaccinated, and this doesn't prove that vaccinations don't work. It's just because their kid had a healthy immune system or wasn't exposed to any serious virus. If your child doesn't get vaccinated, he can pose a serious risk to himself and others he comes into contact with. For example, an unvaccinated child goes into a doctor's office showing symptoms of a fever or a rash. It turns out the child has measles, which could have been fully prevented if he was vaccinated when he was supposed to be. While your child was at the doctor's, he came into contact with a 2-month-old baby that was too young to be vaccinated. This baby contracts the disease, and because it has a weak immune system, it doesn't survive. All of this could have been prevented if that one child was vaccinated. The measles is eradicated in the U.S. because of vaccinations, but around 145,000 people still die from it each year in other countries besides the U.S. The Center for Disease Control states on their website that the measles can be completely erased from the world if people get their vaccinations. This chart from the Immunize for Good website shows the dramatic drops in cases of diseases since vaccines have started being used. Measles, in the 20th century, the annual cases for measles was about 500,000. In 2006, there were only 55 cases. That is a 99% drop. Smallpox was 48,000 in the 20th century and 0 in 2006. That is 100% drop. Polio, 16,000 in 2006, 0, 100% drop. Tetanus, 1,000 in 2006, 41 cases, 96.9% drop. Now I've informed you on the history of vaccines. You know a little bit about how they came to be, what started them. We've talked about common myths like how vaccines don't cause autism and your doctor isn't doing it for money. And you know about the repercussions of not vaccinating and like how it can harm other children. And I really hope you take all of this information and save a life when you have kids get vaccinated.